Now we are going to learn about benchmark percents. So please make sure this note sheet is in front of you. Examples of benchmark percents are listed below. The 1%, 10%, 25%, 33 and a third percent. And their multiples. Their multiples mean 1 times 2 is 2, so that'd be 2%. 10 times 2 is 20, that's 20%. These are benchmark percents. These are percents that we should have memorized by now. Let's practice using our benchmark percent. So it says, label the bar diagram with the multiples of the benchmark percent, 25%, and the multiples of its corresponding benchmark fraction, 1/4. Label the number line with the multiples of the decimal equivalent to 25 hundredths. So what this question is asking us is it's asking us to write the percents, the fractions, and the decimal version of 25, 1/4, and 25 hundredths. So we're going to use this bar diagram to help us. If we are on this outer edge, that is our 0%. And here is 100%. So we see that for 25, we break it up into 4 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4. And with 25%, I like to tell you guys to think about money. If you have 1/4, how much do you have? If I had 1 bar, I would have 25%. If I had 2 quarters or 2 parts of 100%, 25 times 2 is 50%. And then we go one more time and we do another multiple of 25. 25 times 3 is 75%. And of course, if we take up the whole bar, we get our 100%. So that's the multiples of 25%. Let's do the multiples of 1/4. So again, we start at 0. Then 1/4, we broke it up into 4 parts. So this first part is 1/4. The second part is 2/4, which equals or simplifies down to 1/2. This is half of the bar. And then whenever we go again and we have 3 parts, that's 3 out of 4. And then of course 4/4 is equal to 1. And those are our multiples of 1/4 of the fraction. Now we're going to use this number line for our decimals. Again, when we start to the left, we're at 0. Our first decimal is 25 hundredths, 0.25. And then we could look at our percent. Remember, whenever we have a percent, if we have 50%, we start to the left and move our decimal over 2 times. That gives us 0.5. And then again with our 75%, which gives us 0.75. And then over here we have 1 if we have the whole. So how could we extend the model for multiples of 25% greater than 100%? So the percents, if I have greater than 100%, that means that 100 was the whole, but multiple of 25, 25 times 4 gave me the 100%, so I just got to go one more than that. 25 times 5 gives me 125%. So just continuing with the multiples of 25. Let's move on. On number 1, we complete the following model to show benchmark fractions and percents and their equivalent decimals. So we can count how many parts this has us broken up into. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Or we could have seen that that was 10%, and if one part is 10%, then we probably have 10. At the end, we have 100%. And if we have one, that's 10%. If we have two parts, that's 20%. I would like you to go ahead and fill in the percents, the fractions, and the decimals. So press pause and then press play whenever you have finished. Okay, take this time to check your answers. I have labeled my percents, my fractions, and my decimals, increasing by 10%, by a tenth, and by a tenth again. Remember going from, let's look at this 2/10. Remember, if it's 10 in the denominator, we write it as in the tenths place in our decimal. So go ahead and take a couple of minutes pressing pause to check your answers. So here we just have a bar diagram and a number line, and we kind of have to figure out what it's increasing by. So we're going to use that same technique, and we're going to figure out how many parts it is. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts. So we know that if we have all of it, we have 100%. And then if we broke 100% into 5 parts, we would have to divide 100 by 5, which gives us 20. That means that each part is worth 20%. So this first part is 20%. Second part is 20 times 2, a multiple of 20, which is 40%. The third part, 20 times 3, which is 60. 20 times 4, which is 80%, and then 20 times 5, which gives us our 100. Then again, we have 0 for our fraction. If we have one part, we have one part out of 5 total, 2 parts out of 5, 3 parts out of 5, 4 parts out of 5, and 5 parts out of 5, which equals 1, because 5 divided by 5 is 1. Okay, so going to our decimal. Remember, to change a fraction to a decimal, we have to have 10 or 100 as our denominator. So we could take 1/5 and we can multiply it by 2 to get 10 as our denominator. 5 times 2 is 10, and 1 times 2 is 2. That means that our first decimal is 0.2. And then if we have 2 parts of that, 0.2 times 2 is 0.4. Also, remember, let's look at 60%. We could look at 60%, start our decimal at the back, and move it over 2 times to the left, giving us 0.6. Doing the same thing for this last one, which is 0.8. And then, of course, 1. Okay, that is it for part 1 of our benchmark percents. Just figuring out how to label the bars and the number lines and how to figure out our part to whole.